We are learning more today about the Iranian drone attack in Kuwait that killed 6 U.S. service members last week. And the details suggest that the injuries to U.S. service members from that attack are more severe than previously revealed. According to CBS News reporting, dozens of troops suffered, quote, injuries including brain trauma, shrapnel wounds, and burns. At least one may require the amputation of a limb, and more than 30 military members remained in hospitals Tuesday night. That kind of reporting underscores how crucial the journalists covering the war and the Pentagon are, especially at a moment like this. Yet Pete Hegseth's department is intensifying its restrictions on journalists. After Pete Hegseth appeared at a press briefing last week, 3 days after the initial strikes on Iran, his first appearance at a briefing since June, photographers were banned by the Pentagon. Washington Post reports that, quote, several outlets, including the Associated Press, Reuters, and Getty Images, sent photographers to the briefing from Hegseth and General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But after they published photos, which have broad reach because they are licensed by publications globally, members of Pete Hegseth's staff told colleagues that they did not like the way the secretary looked. Pete Hegseth's aides decided to shut out photographers from the two subsequent briefings at the Pentagon on March 4th and March 10th, according to the two people familiar with the decision. The Pentagon says that the journalists were banned in order to use the space more effectively. I want to bring in Politico Pentagon reporter Paul McCleary. Tim Miller is still here as well. Paul, what do you hear the state of the Pentagon, or tell me from your experience, what is the state of being in the Pentagon press corps?
Well, we're not allowed in the building anymore, really, except for briefings like this. And, we're kind of escorted in and then escorted out right after the press conference. And Hegseth has generally been calling on his kind of new favorite outlets, the new Pentagon press corps, I guess you could call it, of conservative and right-wing outlets that they've brought in and credentialed. And he's been calling on them for these press conferences. And I mean, the thing with the photos, Hegseth's tenure here has been, a lot of it has been performative, right? I mean, I think since the beginning, he's kind of camera ready, ready to do this stuff. But then if, they're very concerned about image, and if something doesn't look right, if it's not produced the way that they wanted to produce it, then they clearly don't want it out there and they don't want it to happen. That's why it's so tightly controlled. I mean, he doesn't bring reporters with him on trips. Not that he travels really overseas anymore, but they've shut all that down unless they can control it, every moment.
What were the pictures that he didn't like?
It's unclear exactly what these photos are. I mean, when you see Hegseth out there, he looks, a lot of times when he speaks, he kind of furrows his brow. He kind of looks angry a lot of times. I think they probably don't like that. It's not a good look. But wherever he goes, there's several staffers following him around with video cameras and still cameras, and they're constantly filming these kind of campaign style ads for him, right? He does his very tightly scripted 2 or 3 minute videos from his office once or twice a week, announcing his, the new initiatives that he's pushing out. So they don't like anything that they don't control, which is not surprising. I mean, that's every administration does that to a certain degree, but they are really clearly, if they don't even allow photographers that they don't pay into the room, they want to control everything, every image and every utterance.
What is your understanding of why it took so long to inform the public about the 140 men and women who've been injured?
I mean, it's a huge number, right? And things like that, I will say, always take time. They need to get it right. They need to get the right number. So those always take some time. But it was days, right, before we had any sense of how bad some of these attacks were. We really didn't know. And it's usually a little faster than this. And they finally came out with a number several days after the fact, right? And I think some of these soldiers, as we've seen and we've reported, are pretty critically injured. And it's pretty gruesome stuff, So I think, again, this was supposed to be a clean war from the U.S. perspective, right? Airstrikes, no boots on the ground, things like that. So they were not counting on casualties, I think. And I think they didn't really know how to handle it. I mean, in Venezuela, obviously the one pilot was shot in the leg. He got the Medal of Honor. But most of these U.S. military operations under Trump have been without casualty-free. And so that's tough. Once you start taking casualties, people start raising questions, and it's tougher to justify, and you have to make the case to the American people, which I think the administration still hasn't fully grappled with.
Tim Miller, let me bring you in on this. I will just say from my experience that when a public figure becomes indiscernible in real life from their caricature on SNL, you're like Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense. Politically speaking, in the public's mind, you're dead. You just don't know it. The depiction of Pete Hegseth on SNL is now discernible. I have to stop in front of a TV and turn the sound up to see if I'm watching Colin Jost or Pete Hegseth. And that's Pete Hegseth's fault, right? I mean, Colin Jost is brilliant, but Pete Hegseth walks into a caricatured version. He seems to be playing who he thinks a Secretary of Defense should be, and shielding anything unflattering or human doesn't seem to be working for Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, well, Colin Jost doesn't have a recessed side profile like Pete Hegseth, and so he wouldn't have to stop people from taking pictures of him. He's always looking good in the pictures. But look, on the serious part of this, they're covering this stuff up. I mean, they've kicked Paul and others out of the Pentagon. We live in a free country. It's ridiculous that reporters are being escorted in and out of the Pentagon during wartime. Reporters should have access to other members of the military, not just, the secretary spokesperson who's a former TV host who wants to spin them. The American people deserve to know what's actually happening in this war. And they're also obviously covering stuff up. And the fact that there were more injuries than they had said was bubbling around any military blogs or kind of any of the social media feeds you follow that you could follow that have kind of insider coverage of military affairs. This was something that we're seeing for days before they actually reported it. They lied. The president has lied several times about our complicity in the Tomahawk attack on the girls' school. They've lied to people's face. And so, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing people that care more about their image, and they're lying to the American people.